Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
From the Fifth Quarter Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, you are listening to High School Hoops with our hosts, Steve Collins and Jake Steger.
If you're talking about high school hoops, it's episode 5 today. But anyway, we just try to keep track of the different things that we got going on here at Coach Unplugged. But anyway, before we get started on this, I just want to make sure I give a shout out to our sponsors at Dr. Dish. If you're thinking about getting extra help, if you're thinking about making your team better shooters, if you're thinking about any sort of resource that you can use, this is the #1. I'm telling you, it is a great thing. We've owned a Dr. Dish. We had an old one. We just bought a new one. It's a great machine. You will not be disappointed. And because they are our sponsors, if you mention Coach Unplugged, you'll get a $300 discount off your next one. They have financing. They have ways to work with you. Just contact them. Tell them that they heard about them on our podcast, and they will take really good care of you. I trust you. I trust that they will do that. So here we go. Jake and I are going to talk about tryouts today. So this will be a fun one. And make sure you subscribe and like. If you're liking these high school hoops, let us know. If you have any specific topics, we would sure love to hear. All right, episode 5, take number 2 of this one. I don't know, something was happening with the recording, so it is what it is.
Right.
Not live, but I'm tech, but I'm not that tech. So, all right, so episode 5 of High School Hoops. What do we got for this one?
It's everybody's favorite time of the year. We're getting ready for everything to get going. It's the early part of the season is rising, and so we're going to address a big topic that is probably the most important thing that you got to do right away is determining how you're going to do your trial and determining your roster for the year. And it can be very difficult. I think the more I look at it and evaluate it, I think it looks very different from coaching at different sizes of high schools. I think it's different for programs, where you are in your program. I think it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, so the topic can't be just, what a big D1 program is like where you coach, Steve, compared to where I've coached, where I only had 400 students in the whole high school. Looks a lot different. And,
right. I was talking to a coach at a clinic couple coaches at a clinic this weekend, and they were talking about their schools, and I'm talking about how I do my cuts and all this, and they're looking at me like, we're just trying to find bodies, It's
right.
Like, so I think you're right. I think the size of the school in which you're picking the team is super important. Because if you're not cutting, then I'm not even sure it's tryouts. It's like, do you want to play?
Right.
But but then it's basically how you set that up is going to be different than for me for the first couple of days, where I'm trying to differentiate kids and figure out who can make the team and who can help us and who can't. And you were at kind of a middle school, not middle-sized school.
Right.
So how is it different for you? Because I'll cut 15, 20 kids easy every year.
I never have ever had to cut a child when I was coaching high school basketball. It was really about, the group coming in those years, especially trying to rebuild the program. You're lucky just to have numbers.
Right.
Sometimes on the girls' side, we had years where they only had 2 teams. We've always been lucky enough to have 3 teams, but some years you're trying to survive to even have 3 squads. Kids become ineligible. Kids get hurt. Kids quit because they're not happy because they're not getting their minutes. it's a very difficult task for those people trying to rebuild a program out there.
Right.
It takes time. It's there's no perfect a one size fits all, and it's really hard when you are trying to build a program and you got kids that maybe only got 2 seniors and you got a bunch of sophomores and you're trying to figure out where you really think this sophomore is going to play. Is he going to get enough minutes? And
Right.
and then also every state is different. I think we're under a lot of stress in the state of Wisconsin because we only really have time with our kids in the summer and it's limited.
Right.
A lot of the other coaches out of states, they really understand what their kids are doing. A lot of these guys are just all basketball kids. Our guys are playing other sports, and
Right.
we only have them for a limited period of
I
time.
think a lot of other a lot of other states you can like work out 4 or 5 kids at a time. You can't have necessarily a practice, but you can work them out during the year. Yeah, like we're basically in a dead period during the school year.
It's really hard. You just have open gyms, and that's basically it. And for us, and it's also depending on the relationship that you have with your AD and your schedule or where things start. A lot of coaches that probably have new jobs this year are getting an early game right away as their season starts, and you're wondering how to fill everything in, and you're stressed out. You got tryouts, and you want to get this over with because you want to get right to the gritty and get your team going and start building all those things. The first couple of days is very stressful.
Right.
As a coach, it really is. And so and not only just how to run trials, just to advice out there to all coaches that it is a stressful time, especially for those that are not veteran coaches. And how do we make this all work so we can get everything in? And you know what, there's no perfect blend of it. You just got to make it work, and you got to get that. No.
Yeah. I agree. There's no perfect recipe. I think we'll talk about we'll talk in a second about what we think would be important things to do during tryouts. I think that's important if you're going to have tryouts and you have to cut kids. But I think if you do have to have tryouts and you do have to cut kids, that if they have the heart enough to come and try out, that you have to talk to them. You and I have talked about this before, that I'm not a big one on posting numbers or listing if someone is wanting to try out for my program, I'm going to sit down and talk to them. I'm going to have a conversation about why they didn't make the team or they did make the team. I think that's an honest thing. I think as a coach, you have to be honest that they may not agree with it, but I think it's fair to them that, here's where you are. Here's where I see you are. Maybe you can't play for us this year, kind of thing. But what do you think is important as far as running tryouts?
Well, I think conditioning is huge. I think you have to see where kids are, if they're are ready for the season. Are they able to handle it?
Right.
At the highest level, at the varsity level, conditioning is huge. You can kind of see where kids are at their conditioning level. And then I also think you got to watch them play. Anybody can do a ball handling drill and so forth. You got to be able to see things wide open. And you're going to know who your top players are from already in the summer and so forth. And it's making those individual decisions and, those couple maybe key players or finalizing your roster that you really got to look at. So gearing what you're going to do with that to make those decisions are the big things.
Yeah, and I think something's really important too. It's like when you're saying you got to have them play, I'm not necessarily convinced it has to be 5-on-5, because I use the analogy this weekend. It's like you could put me on the Bucks. We might not win, but they can hide me. If someone posts me up, they can double. There's all sorts of things you can do on 5-on-5, and you can kind of hide. That's why I think in tryouts it's important to do 1-on-1, 2-on-2, and 3-on-3, where they have to show their individual skills. They have to play together. If you play 2-on-2, or you've ever been to a Gus Macker tournament, you're playing 3. You can't hide. There's too much space. There's so in 2-on-2, 1-on-1 obviously gives you one aspect of the game, and then 2-on-2 gives you a different aspect because one person's not going to beat 2 defenders, kind of thing. So I think pulling that into your tryout practice plan is extremely important.
I think there's also just, I think everybody is concerned these days and how schools run and everything about making sure that you're doing it in the proper way, so you don't have a lot of politics and issues as a year goes on, and doing it right, and it's such an overwhelming thing because you're trying so hard to get that roster set up, but you're also trying to make sure that you're making the best effort to give every kid a chance and be fair.
Yeah.
But in the end, you have a good sense of idea what your team is going to look like already. So, like, another question I have is a bigger program is, how do you divide up your tryouts and so forth, especially for our listeners out there, for like a high school like that I had, there's times where we would have the whole program be trying out together. I don't see it if that's the case from a bigger high school. What does it look like for you compared to maybe a smaller high school like that I've coached at before?
Yep. So yeah, we're a school of about 2,000. So I usually have the freshman tryout with the freshmen. Obviously, if I know of you and have seen you play, then I might move you to a different level at that point.
Hey, Coach, I hope you're enjoying high school hoops. Go over and check out teachhoops.com, our sponsor, or one of our sponsors for this podcast. Go over and check them out. 14-day free trial right now. I think you'll love it. Videos, resources, community, other coaches. It is my little baby. So go over and check it out. And as a high school hoop list podcast listener, type in school and you'll get 10% off a lifetime of your membership. So it seems like a great deal to me. Go over and check it out. Let's get back to high school hoops.
And the same thing goes with sophomores. I might have a sophomore come try out with me. I've had what I've done before. I'm trying to think of my son's group. I might have had 3 or 4 of them come up, and then most of them, they tried out for a day or so. And it's like, well, you guys aren't really ready, and here's why, and I want you to be able to play. So I move them back down and let them try out the sophomore level then. So I kind of stagger it in the sense that I want my team picked first, and then it kind of staggers to the JV or sophomore team, which is our next level, and then the freshman team. So we have 3 levels. We basically have varsity, we have junior varsity, and then we have freshmen. So, I want to get my roster is going to get set. Obviously juniors and seniors I don't normally play them down at the JV level. And then, obviously the sophomores, if there's some freshmen, you come up. So I think you got to think of it in terms of a pyramid, or, I'm at the top of the pyramid, or, kind of building blocks. So we want to obviously get the 15 best players on my team, and then we figure out, because we're not dealing with a number issue for the most part. When I first started, I think there was no cut policy, and we had 4 freshman teams. I think my first couple of years, it was crazy. But now and that was something I said, we got to have a cut policy at the freshman level, because it's just, kids got to go do something else at some point. And I think we're being more honest with them. If the 30th freshman, are they ever going to probably play varsity? Maybe, but the odds are probably not great at that point. So that's what I try to do as far as kind of, and every year there's a handful of surprises. Like, whoa, this kid's good enough to make, every year. Nothing really surprises us very much anymore. But at tryouts, we're always kind of surprised. Like, oh, there's a kid. Ooh, there's a freshman that needs to move up, and blah, blah, blah. So it's a little bit different than probably a smaller school where you're trying to just get, maybe everybody together to kind of take a look. And I work myself down too. Like, I'll leave my varsity guys at some point and go down and watch the JV practice or tryouts, and then I'll go down and try to watch the freshmen to make sure I'm not missing anything. We go twice a day too. I'm not sure about you, but we go in the morning and then we go after school for a couple days.
I do it for a couple days. I realize that after that, I can only handle that for so long, and I think it gets really hard on the kids to go 2 days for too long.
Yes. Yes. I try to do it at least a day, maybe 2 days, but after that, it's like, it's just, they're not used to it. Their bodies are not set up to get up that early. It just doesn't work,
Right.
Yeah. And to be honest, early in my career, I do more 2-a-days later in the year, and I don't even do that anymore, because it beats them up so bad that we're trying to make them, it's a marathon and it's not a sprint. But anything else with tryouts? I think
I think that it really comes down to determining rosters then, because I think that a coach is getting those situations about younger players and how to make that decision of when a younger player is ready. You know, I don't know if there's a special formula, you know, is there a percentage of when you look at it, you know, and it's so hard too, because how a kid, you won't really know what that kid really looks like till he gets into an actual game, because the scrimmage is a scrimmage and a practice is a practice, till you realize that kid's going to be beneficial as a freshman or a sophomore.
Right. And I think there's a couple things. I think you got to think of it in terms of a teacher too. It's like, I don't really want to put a kid in calculus that's not good at pre-calc, or I don't want to put a kid in algebra 2 that hasn't passed algebra 1, you know? So it's really hard to sometimes, you know, I always tell people err on the line of keeping them down and pulling them up later, rather than pulling them up and pushing them back down. Had to do both, done both consistently through my career, but I try to err on the side of not pulling up if I can help it. And you do, to be honest with you, you make some mistakes along the way, but you got to kind of think of it, in terms of a educational thing. You got to think of it in terms of, you know, am I pushing this kid too fast? Am I trying to get this 6th grader to take algebra when they're not ready to take algebra in 6th grade, kind of thing? Because I want them to be successful. So
I think the last thing to understand too is just, I've made mistakes, you know, in a small town, and we have probably a lot of listeners that have coached in a small community and so forth, of trying to make parents happy and so forth. And that, you know, you get this really good group of kids that are freshmen. We should keep them all together and they should play together and have more success. And the more that I look into that, I think you're hindering some of those elite players and their progress. And you really got to look at, okay, where, like you talked about 2 or 3 minutes ago, you know, it's really about where that kid fits in their game, not where this team, you know, and making people happy. And I think you got to be true to yourself and what is in the best interest of your program.
And what's in the best interest of that kid too,
right?
To be honest with you, because, you know, if my kid's smart enough to take calculus as a 6th grader, then he should take calculus and they should go to the University of Wisconsin and whatever. I mean, I've told you, we run a talented and gifted program for high school kids. Now, there is an issue with, can a 6th grader go take calculus at the university? There's a maturity level. Even if he's ready, maybe you don't do it. So there's a very fine line there that you got to kind of balance and read the kid. You got to really try to read the kid, in my opinion. Read the parents, read the kid, read the maturity level. Because sometimes it's not about the skill level. It's about, can they handle being on a varsity roster? Can they handle the practices that are going to come with it? Can they handle those things that are going to happen every day? So that's as big an issue sometimes, I think, too.
Right. You know, you get a lot of slack, and you feel the pressure of numbers, and, you know, you keep groups together to, you know, continue the numbers to grow and so forth. And it becomes hard, but you also, I think you have to realize is in the best interest of the kid. I think you put a great point, but there is pressure that you're going to get when you're selecting rosters from previous youth coaches saying, "Oh, we need to keep this group together. They're going to be the best group," and especially in the small town communities. And you just got to go with what is your key players, putting them in the right positions,
right?
Not trying to make anybody else happy.
If they're ready, you're challenging them. If you're ready, you're challenging them. That's what you want to do. The way you get better at things is you're challenged. You make mistakes. You have to fight through that. And one point that we did not make is, I think there's no difference between tryouts and the first day of practice. You better have a plan. You better know exactly what you're doing when you walk in that gym. You better have every minute of every second planned out, ready to go. Here's what we're going to do, blah, 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 blah. Military precision when you're doing this. It shouldn't be any different than your normal practice as far as, you know, expectations and that kind of stuff, even if you're having a cut or not having a cut. Especially in the smaller towns, if you're not cutting and you may be quote unquote a tryout, but that you're setting the precedent for every kid that's coming back. So
right.
All right, sure. Good. Any other things? That sounds really good.
No, I think it's perfect. I think that we can young coaches out there taking on a high school job is, you know, just focus on looking at the real ability in each player as you make those decisions. Don't worry about the group. and then I think you'll make the right choices as you move forward this season.
Yeah, and it's funny because, I mean, we've talked about this in teachhoops.com so much. It's like the two big things is getting your kids to play hard. I'm telling you, it's parents, and it's getting your kids to buy in and play hard. And this is a big one. Tryouts is a big one in that first category because you're dealing with parents. And at some point we should probably talk about aftercuts, but we'll do that on a different one. So
yeah, it sounds
all right, good. All right, see you next week. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Hey, Coach, I hope you enjoyed that. Again, if you love these, go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. 14-day free trial. Also, make sure that you subscribe and like. That really helps us in iTunes. And I'm hoping that I've gotten great input so far on the high school hoops on Fridays. But if you have any input, anything you want us to talk about, you let us know. And have a great weekend. Hopefully, stay warm. Get some of that lawn work done before winter and the holidays come. So we'll talk on Monday.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.